Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Nightfall Terrors. I know many of you enjoy using these videos to help you fall asleep, so before you start to drift off, it would be great if you could leave a comment sharing where you're listening from around the world. If you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Now, let's get cozy, settle in, and begin. My latest footage for the hiking channel turned into a corrupted nightmare. I need to share what the camera failed to capture near that abandoned house. I run a small YouTube channel focused on scenic hikes and exploring less traveled places. Usually it's about enjoying nature and discovering old ruins. But this time, I encountered something different. I want to document it here, to warn others and to clear my mind, though I doubt it will ever truly leave me. It began like any typical day trip. I chose a lesser-known trail in a remote mountain range, hoping to capture unique footage. The hike started beautifully, challenging but rewarding. Sunlight filtered through the trees, birds sang, the usual peaceful setting. I pushed farther than usual, drawn by the promise of a rich view I'd seen on a very old, unreliable map. By late afternoon, clouds rolled in and the temperature dropped. I knew I should turn back but was far in, and the thought of retracing my steps was discouraging. I decided to go a bit further, hoping to find a shorter, albeit steeper, way down another side of the mountain if the weather worsened. That's when I noticed the trail markers had vanished. I'd been following what seemed like a faint game trail, but it ended completely. The forest here was dense and old, with little undergrowth due to the heavy canopy blocking light. It was growing dim, and a creeping unease set in. I wasn't exactly lost. I have a good sense of direction, and my GPS was working, but I was definitely off any marked path. After 20 more minutes of cautious movement through thick rhododendron, I came upon a small clearing. In the center stood a house. It wasn't a ruin like the crumbling stone foundations I usually film. This was a 2-story wooden house, clapboard style with a porch and most windows intact. It was clearly old, paint peeling, the porch roof sagging slightly, but appeared well maintained. There was no driveway or path leading to it, only the wild forest surrounding a strangely neat patch of lawn. The grass here was short, almost freshly cut, which was the first truly odd detail. My YouTuber instincts kicked in. Abandoned house in the middle of nowhere. Perfect content. I checked my camera battery and began filming an intro, talking about being off-trail and the unexpected find. I even joked it looked like a horror movie setup. If only I had known. The camera was acting oddly from the start. Autofocus kept struggling, and the preview screen flickered faintly. I blamed the low light. As I approached, the oddness intensified. The air around the house was unnaturally still. The usual forest sounds, bugs, rustling leaves, distant birds, were muted as if the clearing existed in a silent bubble. The house, though weathered, was impeccably clean. No cobwebs on the porch eaves. Windows were dirty, but neither broken nor boarded. The front door was closed but unlocked. I hesitated, wondering if I should enter, but the urge to explore and capture unique footage pushed me to open it. The door creaked softly, not in a spooky way, but like one rarely opened. Inside, the smell was surprising. Not dust and decay, but a faint scent of lemon polish and old wood, clean and domestic. Stepped inside, camera rolling, narrating quietly. The interior was baffling. A small entry led to a living room with furniture, a sofa armchairs, coffee table, and a rag rug on wooden floors. Everything was pristine, not new, but spotless. No dust on the table or grime on the faded upholstery. It looked as if someone had tidied up just an hour ago. Reviewing the footage later, this part was a mess. Grainy, oversaturated in strange patches, with audio distorted by a low, warbling hum I don't remember hearing. My voice is barely audible. This is incredibly well kept, I whispered, trying to hold the camera steady. Or not well kept, lived in. But who would live out here, so isolated? I moved through the ground floor. The dining room had a table set with simple ceramic plates and cutlery. Again, spotless. The kitchen was small and dated, but counters were wiped clean. No food or dirty dishes. Even the sink faucet gleamed faintly in the dim light. It was deeply unsettling. This wasn't abandonment. It was sudden absence. The camera struggled badly in the kitchen. The footage shows flickering light and digital glitches that obscure details I recall clearly. The feeling that someone had just left was overwhelming, as if they'd heard me and slipped out the back, or were hiding upstairs. I called out, "Hello, is anyone here?" My voice sounded loud and intrusive in the quiet. On the recording, my call is distorted, almost demonic, followed by a burst of static. On the living room mantel and a side table were framed photos. I tried to zoom in. They showed a family. A man in his mid-40s with kind eyes and a receding hairline. A woman younger with a warm smile and dark wavy hair. And a girl around 7 or 8, pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. They looked happy and normal. One photo showed them in front of this house, the man's arm around the woman, the girl holding a flower. The footage of these photos is useless, blurry and pixelated where faces should be, as if the camera refused to capture them clearly. I only have my memory of their smiles. Okay, so people definitely lived here, I murmured, frustrated with the camera's failure. But where are they? And why is this place so immaculate? A knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. This wasn't exploration anymore. It felt wrong. A remote house, left unattended even briefly, would show signs of nature reclaiming it, or dust settling. This felt staged, carefully prepared and waiting. I decided to check upstairs. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step echoing in the silence. I used my camera light, but the beam flickered and seemed weak. There were 2 bedrooms and a small bathroom. The first bedroom was clearly the parents'. A neatly made large bed, dresser, wardrobe. On the nightstand lay reading glasses next to a closed book. Again, no dust. It was as if someone had just stepped away. The footage here is almost completely dark, with occasional flashes suggesting furniture. The second bedroom was the child's. A small bed with a bright patchwork quilt. Stuffed animals sat on a shelf, their button eyes seeming to watch me. A child's drawing taped to the wall showed a stick figure family under a yellow sun beside a very large, very green tree. The tree's trunk was thick, branches reaching protectively over the family. When I filmed the drawing, playback showed only chaotic colors. My unease turned to real fear. The silence, the order, the sense of sudden, unexplained departure. It was overwhelming. I'm not an investigator, just a hiker with a failing camera, completely out of my depth. In the master bedroom, on the dresser tucked under a tarnished silver jewelry box, I found a note. It was a single folded sheet, yellowed with age, but with ink still dark and clear. Not a letter, more like a journal entry or prayer. My hands trembled as I unfolded it and tried to film while reading. The handwriting was neat and masculine, likely the man in the photos. The footage of this is useless. Static, scrolling colors, and a high-pitched whine, painful to hear. I only remember the text clearly. The hunger is great today. It whispers through roots, through floorboards. We offer what we can. We are grateful for its shade, for its enduring presence. It was here before us. It will be here after. The little one is strong. She feels it more keenly now. This is good. The communion must be complete for her to flourish under its boughs. It demands patience. It demands faith. The growth provides. The growth takes. We give ourselves to the growth so we may become part of its eternity. It asks for stillness, for quiet nourishment. We must be still. We must be silent. Soon, we will be rooted, unchanging, forever part of its design. Blessed be the growth. May its reach extend. May its thirst be quenched. A cold dread overwhelmed me, making me nauseous. The growth. What could that be? The child's drawing of the enormous tree flashed in my mind, dominant and unnatural. The language, hunger, whispers through roots, communion, rooted, was deeply disturbing. This wasn't an ordinary abandoned farmhouse. It was something else, something sinister. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy and oppressive. I could hear my own breathing, loud and uneven in my ears. The sensation of being watched grew stronger, not by human eyes, but by something more pervasive. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath. Okay, I'm done. I'm leaving, I said, my voice trembling. Then I noticed the camera had stopped recording on its own. The red recording light was off. I fumbled to switch it back on, panic rising. This is too much. This note, this place. I need to get out. I backed away from the bedroom, careful not to turn my back on the empty space. I hurried down the stairs. Each creak felt accusatory. I didn't stop to look around anymore, just headed straight for the front door, pressing the record button repeatedly, hoping the camera would respond. My hand was on the doorknob when I heard it, a faint sound from upstairs, a soft creak, almost like a sigh, like a floorboard settling or someone shifting their weight. I didn't wait. I yanked the door open and rushed onto the porch, then half jumped, half fell down the steps into the clearing. The fading daylight seemed dimmer, shadows longer and deeper. I didn't look back at the house. I headed toward the edge of the clearing, where I thought I had entered, and plunged back into the trees, holding my camera tightly, hoping it was still recording. The relief of leaving the house was overwhelming, but short-lived. The forest, which had once seemed dense but harmless, now felt threatening. Every shadow seemed to move. Every leaf rustle sounded like something stealthy. The note mentioning the growth and roots echoed in my mind. I glanced nervously at the trees around me. They were just trees, right? They had to be. I pushed through thick undergrowth, trying to put as much distance as possible between myself and that clearing. My heart was pounding. I tried to convince myself that this was just a creepy, abandoned house, that maybe the family had moved on or hired someone to maintain the place. But the note didn't fit any normal explanation. After about 100 yards, I passed a dense group of old oak trees, their branches twisted and tangled, creating a thick canopy even in the fading light. As I moved past the last trees bordering the clearing, a sound stopped me cold. A voice, soft, weak, almost like the wind whispering, but with a clearly human rhythm. Help me. I froze. My blood ran cold. It was so faint I almost thought I'd imagined it. But then it came again, clearer and filled with the desperation. Please, help. The voice seemed to come from my left, deeper inside that cluster of ancient trees, despite every instinct telling me to run. Some morbid curiosity or a buried sense of duty made me turn. I still held the camera, pointing it blindly, hoping to capture whatever was making the sound. I took a few hesitant steps toward the voice, peering into the shadowy tangle of trunks and low branches. Hello, I croaked. Here, please. The voice responded, a little stronger, guiding me. And then I saw it, or rather, her. It was one of the large oaks, its trunk thicker than any I had seen all day, ancient and deeply cracked, fused into the wood, as if the tree had grown around her, or she had become part of it, was a woman. For a moment my mind couldn't process it. It was the woman from the photos in the house. Her dark, wavy hair was tangled and streaked with something like moss. Her pale, gaunt face was turned toward me, eyes wide with terror mixed with a hollow resignation. Her skin, where visible, had a bark-like texture, dry and discolored, blending almost seamlessly with the tree. Her arms and lower body were completely embedded in the trunk. Only her torso, shoulders, and head were visible, but even these were deeply embedded. She looked drained, changed. I gasped softly, unable to speak or move. Her cracked lips moved. Help me, please. Her voice was a dry rustle, like dead leaves. I finally found my voice, trembling uncontrollably. What happened to you? Who did this? A flicker of something unreadable crossed her eyes. The growth. It took us. It keeps us. Nourishment. The words came slowly, each a struggle. The family. Your husband. Your daughter. I asked, the images of the photos burning in my mind. Her gaze shifted as if looking past me. He welcomed it. He brought it to us. He's rooted deep. He sleeps now. A tear, thick and slow like sap, ran down her bark-like cheek. My daughter, she's still aware. It wants her fresh. Please, you have to help her. Help her. How? Where is she? I stammered, overwhelmed, struggling to understand this horror. How could I help? What could I do against this? Her eyes darted frantically, not at me, but behind me, toward the house or deeper into the woods. Her breath caught. It's coming. Who? What's coming? I whispered, fear gripping me. I didn't dare look back. Then I heard it. Faint at first, soft, deliberate steps on the forest floor behind me. Twigs snapping gently. Leaves rustling, not from wind, but from movement. My skin crawled. The steps were slow, deliberate, almost casual, making them even more terrifying. The woman in the tree saw the fear on my face, or perhaps felt it herself. Her eyes widened impossibly. A guttural sound tore from her throat, not a plea this time, but a scream of raw terror. No, please, stop, she screamed, her gaze fixed on whatever was behind me. Leave him. Don't let it. Her voice cut off, choking. I didn't wait to see what it was. I didn't look back. That scream, that desperate final stop, not aimed at me but at something behind me, broke my paralysis. I ran. I have never run like that. Panic drove me. Branches whipped my face. Roots threatened to trip me. But I didn't care. I ran, lungs burning, heart pounding. I thought I heard those soft steps behind me keeping pace, though maybe it was only the pounding in my ears. I didn't risk looking back. The woman's scream, her changed face, the father's note about the growth, they all mixed into a nightmarish image in my head. I ran toward what I hoped was the main trail, back toward my car. I have no idea how long I ran. It felt endless. Every shadow, a threat. Every sound, a possible pursuer. I kept moving, stumbling through dense woods. The light had nearly vanished, leaving the forest in deep twilight. Finally, through luck or instinct, I broke out of the trees onto something familiar. The switchback trail I had used earlier. I was overwhelmed with relief to see a marked path. I didn't stop running. I practically flew down the trail, my hiking poles rattling uselessly on my backpack. It must have taken another hour or more before I reached the trailhead, the small gravel parking lot where my car was parked. It was the most welcome sight I've ever seen. My hand shook so badly I struggled to get the key in the ignition. The engine roared and I reversed, spun the car around, and sped away, gravel spraying behind me. I didn't glance in the rearview mirror until I was miles down the highway. I drove straight home without stopping. I didn't even notice I still held the camera until I was unlocking my front door. Later, with a sinking feeling, I checked the SD card. Almost all the footage was corrupted. The files existed but were unplayable, full of digital noise, static, blocks of distorted color, and eerie garbled audio. There were brief moments where I thought I could make out a shape or a faint word, but nothing clear. No proof of what I saw in that house, the note, or the horrifying figure in the tree. It was as if the place, or whatever was there, refused to be recorded. I haven't slept well since. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face, fused into that tree. I hear her voice, begging and then screaming. The growth. What was it? Some kind of sentient parasite. A local deity they worshipped until it consumed them. And what was coming for me? The father, rooted deep, but somehow still moving. Or was it the growth itself? The missing footage makes it worse. It's just my word and my memory against silence. Sometimes I doubt myself, wondering if the stress and isolation made me imagine it all. But then I remember the cold dread, the lemon polish smell, the note in my hands, and that final scream. No, it was real. I haven't returned to those woods, and I don't think I'll ever hike alone in such a remote place again. I had to work on the 13th floor, but my building only has 12. I've never been good with names, but dates stick to me like dust on an old industrial carpet. It was May 19th, exactly 4:42 p.m., when I first noticed an envelope marked floor 13. I say noticed because I didn't actually receive it. It was simply there, resting on my Formica desk, as if it had materialized from the dry office air. I remember that moment clearly because I document everything, including now. That afternoon was dragging on. I had shut down my computer, pushed back my chair with a soft creak, and slid my arms into my coat. I was ready to leave, prepared for another quiet walk to the bus terminal. Then the envelope appeared. There were no footsteps, no nearby presence, no rustling of paper, nothing. It was just there. The envelope was a deliberately dull gray, yet something about its texture drew your gaze, as if designed to absorb curiosity. Sender, internal unit, late compilation task. Report non-human activity in Sector B between 0 and 0300 instructions. Remain objective. Avoid emotional language. Names unnecessary. Floor 13. The problem was that floor 13 didn't officially exist. The building where I worked, I'm not sure anymore, is a plain concrete block from the 90s, dressed in modern pretensions that smell faintly of decay. 12 floors total, elevator buttons from ground to 12. A lobby cafe perpetually filled with burnt coffee and stale sweet rolls. But if you look closely at the 12th floor, there's an unmarked door, always locked, tucked into a dimly lit corner where the light never settles. Sometimes during the graveyard shift, when most employees have left and silence creeps in like a quiet guest, you can hear noises, furniture being dragged, slow footsteps, something heavy moving overhead. It never lasts long, just enough to fuel speculation. My co-workers had various theories. A shadow government surveillance office, secret cults backed by management, experimental labs run by contractors. One claimed aliens. Another swore it was executive parties. I didn't care. Not until the envelope. I took it to my supervisor, Lionel. He's old school. The only one still using a fountain pen and recycled paper. When I mentioned floor 13, his expression changed in a way I still can't describe. It was as if I'd said something he'd been waiting to hear for years. "You got one?" he asked quietly. I nodded, then follow it. No explanation, no reassurance, just silence. A silence stretched thin enough to make clear this conversation was over, and that from now on I belonged to a different level of the organization. I returned to my desk uncertain. I set the envelope down and stared at it, hoping it might explain itself. At 6 p.m., I clocked out as usual. But that night, the envelope went home with me. Not physically, but in my mind. The task, the non-existent floor, Leono's gaze. At exactly 3 a.m., when I would usually be asleep or flicking through muted TV channels, I found myself logging into the shared note system on my work laptop. I typed hesitantly. Nothing to report. No non-human presence detected. Report concluded. Closed the file, shut the laptop, and went to bed, thinking it was a corporate prank, an elaborate joke. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The next morning, my access badge didn't work. The scanner flashed red. The glass door stayed locked. The receptionist, a woman I'd never seen before, with oddly generic features, looked at me as if I were a problem to solve. "You're not in the system," she said flatly. "Rehearsed." I tried to argue, gave my name, department, extension. She kept typing without expression, pretending to search a database that didn't exist. When I mentioned Lionel, she raised an eyebrow and replied coldly, "There's no one here by that name." Something inside me snapped. I don't know what, but an urgent, uncontrollable impulse took over. I ran down the hallway, heart pounding, lungs burning. At the last turn, the elevator doors stood open, as if waiting. They slid wide with eerie calm. The cabin was empty, lit in a sterile white that felt more surgical than safe. I heard footsteps behind me. Security, the receptionist, something else. I didn't wait. I stepped in. The doors closed. The elevator began rising on its own. The numbers climbed. I hoped it would stop at 12. It did. The doors opened with a soft hiss. The 12th floor was pitch black, silent except for a low hum of a flickering light bulb deep inside. The only light was a faint red exit sign at the end of the hall. Then I heard a ping. My work laptop. Somehow, it was on. That made no sense. I had shut it down, saved documents, close windows, hold power button, watch screen, go dark. Yet there it was, glowing faintly in a room that shouldn't exist. I approached slowly, unwillingly. My legs moved without consulting my mind. Each step echoed too loudly, as if these halls hadn't seen a visitor in decades. The linoleum was colder than usual. The air was damp, humidity that didn't match the HVAC system. Something was wrong. When I reached my cubicle, same papers, chipped mug, favorite pen off to the side. I saw the Notes app open on the screen, and it was typing. By itself. Presence detected. Non-human interaction initiated. Reporter present. Reporter being observed. The monitor flickered softly as if breathing unevenly. The cursor blinked, waiting. I stepped back, heart racing. The air behind me thickened as if watched by something without eyes. Then I saw the reflection. It wasn't mine. There was something behind me, something only the screen could register. Its silhouette was wrong. Too tall, too narrow. Its head stretching upward, searching for a ceiling that wasn't there. Without a face, I knew it was watching me. I spun around. Nothing. The hallway stood empty, lights pulsing irregularly, like a heartbeat about to fail. The laptop chimed again. Escape not recommended. Observation must continue. That's when dread settled into my bones. I was trapped, not by walls or hands, but by something deeper. A pressure, an enchantment, clamping down on my will like a lid on a sealed jar. Then a snap, close by, like bones cracking. It broke the spell. I ran, knocked over chairs, slammed into partitions. Didn't look back. I knew if I did, I'd see it. Or worse, I'd feel it. The presence, the touch, skin that wasn't skin. The elevator waited, doors open like a mouth. But when I reached it, the display showed something impossible. Floor 13, that was never there, not in tests, not during maintenance. The number glowed dark red, like dried blood. Worse, the lobby button was unlit, no way down. Then I heard it, not footsteps or whispers, a dragging sound. Something heavy, wet, moving across linoleum like raw meat, pulled by trembling hands. A sweet, rotten smell filled my nose, like jasmine left to rot in an open grave. The doors began closing. I threw myself inside. At the exact moment they shut, I glimpsed it. Not fully, just an arm. Far too long, with joints where none should be. Its skin looked like wet papier-mâché. The fingers didn't end. They kept growing, reaching, searching. A single eye was open in the center of the palm. It saw me. and I saw it. The elevator descended, but the display was off. No numbers, no indication. The sensation was of slow, steady falling, like being pulled away from the world. Inside the cabin, I pressed my back against the wall, breathing heavily. The putrid, sweet smell clung to my clothes and tongue. For a moment, I wondered if I'd ever leave, that this elevator was a timeless limbo. Then, with a soft, mechanical sigh, the doors opened. 12th floor. Everything was normal. Fluorescent lights, white and impersonal. The hum of keyboards, printers, distant voices in the break room. No dampness, no darkness, no empty halls. There were my co-workers, same faces, same problems. Lionel passed by, coffee cup in hand, raising an eyebrow when he saw me stepping out, pale and tense. "Whoa, looks like you've seen a ghost," he said with his usual morning sarcasm. I didn't answer. I just walked to my desk. My computer was on, showing the login screen, waiting for my password. Everything suggested I had just arrived, like any other day. My documents stacked neatly, my mug in place. Nothing unusual, or at least nothing anyone else could see. I sat and typed my password with the trembling fingers. Since 8 a.m., I've tried to work. I look at emails, spreadsheets, pending requests, but I can't write anything except this. I don't know how long that moment lasted. I don't know if anyone noticed. Apparently not. But now, as I write, I catch something in my screen's reflection. Another envelope, white, identical to the first, placed on my desk, behind me. Whenever something feels off, I wonder if I've slipped into an alternate universe again. I miss my husband. I crouched on the stairs, peering from behind the wall at the man having breakfast at our dining table. The man I married 2 years ago held a steaming coffee mug to his lips, taking slow, careful sips. In his other hand was a book, which he flipped through occasionally. He didn't seem to notice I was there. He sat there as if everything was completely normal. Gently, he set his mug down and rested his head on his hand, looking away from me. The food on the table had grown cold. He'd been waiting for me to come downstairs for nearly 20 minutes. I narrowed my eyes and took a deep breath, exhaling slowly to avoid drawing attention. He lifted his head, put down the mug, and leaned back in his chair. His black-brown hair shifted slightly as he shook his head before settling back at the nape of his neck. I stared a while longer, searching for any sign that something was wrong. He definitely looked like my husband. Everything matched. His choice of coffee and pancakes, the slight frown his eyebrows made while reading, even the habitual flip of his hair. He always flipped his hair like that. I stretched my legs and pressed my hands on the step. Maybe I was imagining it. I looked down at my legs, knowing I had a tendency toward suspicion. This uneasy feeling wasn't unfamiliar. It had been a recurring part of my life for as long as I could remember. When I was 10, I fell from a tree. My brother and I had been playing outside all day, racing to the top of an oak tree on the edge of our yard. Being older, my brother took the lead, and desperate to catch up, I leapt from branch to branch. Halfway up, my foot slipped, and I fell almost 12 feet, landing on my shoulder. My vision went dark. When I woke up, my mother stood over me, gently shaking me. I was lying on our living room floor. Apparently, I had taken a nap on the couch and fallen off. I never climbed that tree, and my brother had been at his friend's house all day. That was my mom's explanation, but it wasn't what really happened. Similarly, when I was 14, we picked up the family car from the shop. I remarked on how much the paint had faded, making the once black car look navy blue. But apparently, it had always been navy blue, except it hadn't. It wasn't until my senior prom night that I put it all together. My then boyfriend and I had argued at the dance, so I called my parents. My dad answered the phone groggily. He had been asleep and agreed to come get me. When I climbed into the car, my dad was still in pajamas and asked if I wanted to talk. I didn't. So we drove home in silence. The winding back roads were dark, except for the car's headlights and occasional street lights. Suddenly, a dog darted across the road and into the woods. My dad slammed on the brakes and got out to check on it. He disappeared into the darkness beyond the headlights. I waited anxiously, watching the spot where I last saw him. After what felt like forever, a figure appeared. A man wearing my dad's dress shirt and pants, with his lanyard and ID card around his neck. He got into the driver's seat and looked at me. I guess it ran off. I didn't see it, he said. Goosebumps rose on my neck. I wasn't sure how loud or how long I screamed before realizing I couldn't breathe. My throat tightened, and I had to focus to take a deep breath. Throughout, the man watched me with a shocked expression, holding up his hands to calm me. And eventually, he did. Once I had composed myself, I understood what this meant. At some point that day, I had made a choice, whether big or small, that led me to shift realities. I was now in a dimension nearly identical to my own, except my father had worked late that night. I missed my dad, the real one. I wondered if the fake me was with my real dad. Had she screamed at a man in pajamas? Had she pieced it together like I did? I hated this feeling. It was this very feeling that made me tell Alex about my fear of these alternate universes. These places felt almost right, but always carried a strange unease. I didn't know what caused these shifts, and I was scared. Differences between universes were subtle. Same jobs, same spouses, same personalities. Usually it was the furniture arrangement, a changed mannerism, or a forgotten memory, something that should have stayed consistent before we married. I explained this to Alex. Together we created a way to confirm if one of us had shifted universes. A password, a sequence of numbers we would say to each other every morning. Every day, while getting ready for work, I'd call out the numbers and he'd repeat them back every single morning. Except today, when our routine broke. When I woke up, he was already downstairs. Strange, but I heard him moving plates and silverware. I got dressed and called out, "Alex, 1052. "What?" came the reply, but it wasn't Alex's voice. Alex wouldn't have responded that way. A chill ran down my spine as I scanned the bedroom. Everything looked normal, so I tried again. The reply was a high-pitched, drawn-out "what?" Stretching the word unnaturally. My heart sank, and suddenly I felt very cold. Why was he downstairs? We always made breakfast together. That's when I decided to quietly go downstairs to see who was in our kitchen. I've been sitting here ever since. My eyes dropped to my shoes. Black, flats I wore to work, scuffed and scratched all over. They hadn't looked like that yesterday. I worked in an office. How could I have gotten so many scuffs? "What are you doing?" I gasped and stumbled back, frozen, unable to breathe, heart racing. The man looked at me, confused and worried. "What's wrong?" he asked, glancing behind him, then back at me. "Why didn't you say the password back?" I asked, voice trembling. He hesitated, frowned, and lowered his chin. "Ilea, are you okay?" His eyes searched my face. "How do I know you're still you if you don't say it back?" I said. He tilted his head, eyes softening. "Is this about your reality shifting again?" he asked, a slight smile on his lips. I studied his face. His pupils dilated as he smiled, waiting. This had to be Alex. What else would it be about? I said, breaking eye contact. "Come on, Ilea. I told you not to worry about that anymore. We're still here, together, in the same place we've always been." He stood, still facing me. "Now come eat, or we'll both be late." I forced myself to stand, eyes fixed on the floor. That wasn't the password, but at least this Alex wasn't hostile. I could live with that. I had to. I work at a local supermarket, and lately, there's something unusual going on with our customers. To begin, I'm currently the assistant department manager, ADM, of the front end at Willie's Wonder Store, a local supermarket chain here in Queensland, Australia. Yes, I'm Aussie. I started working for bigger chains around age 14, but quickly realized that the so-called family values they promoted were just manipulative marketing, especially after my first drink at 16. That was one of the best nights of my life, honestly. Sometimes I miss those high school days, even if we did break some rules. Soon after, I lost my job. Home life was tough. My mom was overwhelmed, juggling work, school, and a 7-day job. I needed to find a new position quickly, preferably somewhere local and free from the corporate manipulation I'd experienced before. That's when I joined Willie's Wonder Store. It was a smaller, reputable local brand. Living with my widowed mom in a low-income home, I jumped at the opportunity. Fast forward 7 years, and I'm now a scruffy 23-year-old employee who hasn't moved far up the ladder. The pay is decent, and thanks to my job, Mom was able to quit her stressful work, and I helped pay off the debts she accumulated after Dad passed. I share this so you understand why I can't simply quit and walk away. But enough about me. Let me explain why I'm posting and asking for advice. I started my ADM role 2 months ago, just as our previous BDM, Rebecca, was entering her 3rd trimester and had to take maternity leave. She was actually told by the store manager to go on leave or risk being fired. She loved working the front end and engaging with customers, but I can't imagine how much pressure she was under, especially since her husband is wheelchair-bound after a severe car crash. Taking care of a baby would be exhausting for both of them. With Rebecca on limited hours, I was trained and expected to cover her responsibilities during her absence, something I doubt will be short-term. One of the odd tasks I inherited is opening and closing the store at night. Willie's operates on a somewhat unusual schedule. We open every morning at 10 a.m. sharp and close at 6 p.m., no matter the day. On holidays, hours extend to 9 p.m. However, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we reopen from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. for what the manager calls graveyard trading hours. The pay doubles during these times, which seemed like a good deal to me at first. Rebecca used to start work at noon, close the store at 6 p.m., and then return at 11 p.m. to reopen. The previous ADM, Kyle, would close at 4 a.m. Rebecca's presence was mainly to verify staff headcounts and prevent anyone from sneaking extra shifts at double pay through the lax scheduling system. I now fill both those roles. I arrive around 11:50 a.m. and clock in at 11:54 a.m. I find starting early helps me get a sense of the day's flow and stock levels. My main role is managing the front end, overseeing staff, selling liquor and other age-restricted items, which usually triggers complaints about needing ID, typical for a checkout worker. Around 5:30 p.m. close to closing time, we take out the trash from registers. If you've worked retail, you know the drill. Sending a junior staff member with trash bags to the dumpster behind the loading bay. After that, I take the store keys, lower the roller doors, leaving only the one by the express register open so the Nightfall team can guide any remaining customers, usually elderly folks who lose track of time, out through it. Once everyone's gone, I close that last door, say goodnight to the Nightfall ADM, Sarah, and let the front end team leave via the dock exit. By then, it's usually 6:10 p.m. Then I spend about 20 minutes reviewing the store's security footage, checking for any unusual activity. The system highlights anything that doesn't match the sales at the register. I sift through blurry freeze frames, labeling incidents as suspicious, scan errors, or shoplifting. Most times, it's just the camera glitching, because someone bought an item elsewhere but still has it in their cart. By 6:30 p.m., I save the footage reports in a folder for the store manager, David, to review when he starts his shift at 10 a.m. Afterward, I stay until 7 p.m. to review team stats, contract hours, duty restrictions, and any behavior notices. On non-graveyard days, my shift is a straightforward 7-hour block, starting just before noon, finishing at 7 p.m., then going home to Mom and our black cat, Cole. But on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, the schedule changes. I work the day shift, close the store at 6 p.m., then leave. But I have to return 5 hours later to reopen. On those nights I walk home, a 25-minute stroll to our small family house, and take a 3-hour nap, usually with Cole curled on my neck like a warm scarf. Mom wakes me up before bed, scoops up the cat, and I take a quick hot shower to freshen up before switching back into work clothes. Then I head back to the store, grabbing a quick bite from a local fast food joint on the way. By the time I arrive, the Nightfall crew is finishing up and preparing to leave. Sarah and I exchange reversed farewells. I wave goodbye instead of her. I'm not alone during this shift. A few members of what David calls the graveyard shift stick around. They're quiet, focused mostly on scanning and bagging items, which makes sense. It's a dull combo of night shift and checkout work. The customers at night aren't usually too troublesome. We're in a small country town, so it's mostly stoners, moody teens, stressed college students, and the occasional oddball. Near 4 a.m., I follow the usual closing routine, locking doors, taking out trash, reviewing footage and reports. What confuses me is that sometimes the cameras fixate on random customers, focusing on strange things like a man's neck flap or a punk with a broken arm. Since the footage is often blurry, I usually dismiss these as irrelevant. Despite some odd customers and tiring co-workers, the night shift paid well and went by quickly, at least until last Monday. That Monday brought a sharp drop in temperature, fog, cold drizzle, dry winds, the usual signs of winter arriving. It also marked a shift in how the night hours felt. I entered through the back door, greeted by Sarah waving as I walked past the stockroom shelves. toward the break room and offices. I had a hot chicken burger meal that slowed my pace a bit, bundled up in 3 layers. But after waving back, I heard Sarah call me over. She looked unsettled. Her team had left early, but there were still at least 2 pallets of stock left. Soft drinks and energy drinks. Here's how the conversation went. Usually I start the chat, but this time Sarah spoke first. "Nate, I'm staying late tonight. Some weird person was hanging around the roller doors, staring at team members. I'm off the clock, but keep your earpiece on." I nodded. "Want me to tell the others to watch out?" She flinched. "No, better if they don't know. Just a feeling. You're not one to trust feelings easily. I can't explain. Just follow me." Instead of following, she led me straight to the communications office. At our store, we have 2 offices. David's office for meetings and paperwork, and the communications office, which houses 2 outdated PCs, the printer, and the charging stations for walkie-talkies and earpieces. Staff clock in here with a payroll, number, and password. These offices are the only locked rooms besides the back and loading bay doors. Sarah handed me an earpiece. I untangled the wires in one hand, while clipping the power back to my belt and the speaker onto my shirt pocket. The earpiece loops over the ear, with the speaker resting just above the eardrum. "Listen, I just need you to be my eyes and ears out there, all right? I'll handle the reports and footage from here. Just let me stay in the main office. Don't let anyone else know I'm here." Sarah was acting oddly, reserved, almost evasive. Before I could ask what was going on, the door to David's office locked behind her, leaving me alone for several minutes. Usually, I might have checked the overstocked shelves if I had time, but my now lukewarm burger was calling. I needed something to eat. After storing my clothes in the locker room, I kept my jacket and scarf on, struggling a bit to clip my name badge onto the jacket instead of my shirt. As I left the men's locker room, I heard co-workers' cars arriving in the parking lot. Sarah stayed silent on the comm channel while I did a head count on the gloomy team I called my co-workers. One seemed confused, but if anyone tried to speak, they didn't bother following through. Everything was routine as serving a quirky crowd could be. Around 1 a.m., Sarah finally spoke through the earpiece. She'd moved to the communications office once the other crew clocked in. I could hear the hum of an overworked fan on her end. "Register 3, man in a mobility scooter, back of his neck," she reported. Her voice caught me off guard, but I masked my surprise by remembering I hadn't refilled the drink fridges, giving me a reason to pass. Register 3, registers 1 and 2 were fully stocked, but 3 was partially empty, busy with the traffic. The customer there was a heavy-set man on a scooter. I don't judge weight, but I did pity his joints. Until I saw the back of his neck, I couldn't immediately make sense of what I saw. "What do you see?" Sarah asked. I said nothing, averted my eyes, and started stocking drinks. The man noticed and asked in a thick lisp, "Excuse me, do you have some sarsaparilla?" I handed him a bottle, but he seemed disappointed. "Ma puis," he pleaded. I offered him the whole crate, and his face lit up like a child at Christmas. He took nearly all of them, at $3.50 a bottle. That was at least 23 bottles, minus the one I put on the fridge shelf. The cashier shot me a glare, having to bag more items. But the man was happy and settled back into his scooter. At first glance, I thought the rolls of skin on his neck were just that, skin. But now I saw lips, pale, with thick tongues occasionally, poking out, licking and drooling over the area. I froze and quickly walked away. When I get scared, I don't react like most people. I go stiff and cold, the opposite of an adrenaline rush. Luckily, no one seemed to notice. The store was quiet. Less than a minute after the encounter, I clocked off for a 15-minute break. The break room was a relief, warm and quiet, far better than the shop floor. Even better was locking myself in the communications office with Sarah after I messaged her. I saw it. Let me in. The office was hot, with PCs running hard. Sarah waited expectantly, leaning against the grimy printer. Well, she prompted, hesitated. The man had lips and tongues. Sarah stared at me as if I wasn't there, then pulled up reports from previous nights when I worked as front-end manager. The same man appeared in each, cameras focusing on his neck. I still don't understand what this has to do with the weird guy you mentioned. She didn't answer but showed me a grainy, dark image from earlier in her shift. The figure's body shape matched the scooter man's, but he was standing on what looked like a blob of flesh, something slug-like. I shook my head. It's probably some weird prankster trying to scare people with effects. Some folks do that. I didn't believe myself. There was no rational explanation except the supernatural. Here's the deal. No weird customers until 3 a.m. Then I leave. Sound good? It was 1:36 a.m., meaning I'd be back on the floor by 1:45. I nodded and left the office. I heard her lock the door behind me. I ate a poor quality cup of instant noodles before returning to the main counter. The store had slowed to a crawl, only one confused driver coming in to ask for directions since we were the only place open nearby. He was visiting his grandpa in the next town. At 2:55 a.m., it arrived. At first glance, it looked like a typical drug addict. Scruffy hair, wrinkled skin, rotting teeth, and a bad attitude. But at my register, it was clearly not human. Probably a woman in her late 50s, a bit younger than my mom, but without any graceful aging. 20 ciggies now. My usual. I'm used to rude customers, but I had no idea what usual meant. I asked politely, "Sorry, what brand do you want?" The figure's bony fingers clenched, pounding the counter and screaming like a banshee. "The blue ones." I froze and assessed the threat. If it jumped over the counter, I could probably escape due to its height. If it tried to hit me, I could back away. I took a breath and tried to calm the situation. "Ma'am, I need a brand name, please. There's no need to be aggressive." Suddenly, it mashed its face into the counter. I heard cracking, then ripping. Not like flesh, but like rubber. I just want some Earl's Blues, darling," it croaked. Its neck bent sharply, like a rubber hose twisted 180 degrees. The face was flattened against the counter, like wet clay being pressed down. Its skin was leathery and gray, clearly not human. Terrified, I got the cigarettes it wanted. It handed me 2 $50 bills, laughed maniacally, and left with the carton, giggling as it went. No one else looked up. The rest of the night dragged until trash duty. This time, I volunteered to take the bags out myself, letting my co-workers restock snacks. Sarah appeared at the dock, telling me to act like she was just checking in. I waited silently for 10 minutes by the dumpster. I needed human presence after what I'd seen. "I saw what happened," she said quietly. I didn't respond. She knew my way of coping was to internalize and freeze. "I'll give you a lift home. Think your mom will mind if I crash on the couch?" Nodded. Neither of us wanted to be alone tonight. We didn't have time to talk much before heading back inside. Closing was easy, but my co-workers eyed Sarah suspiciously, despite her excuse of finishing the last pallets. I had to tell one to move, which he did reluctantly. I got the feeling it was best to keep Sarah separate from the night crew. Finally, it was time to go. After filing reports and breaking down pallets, Sarah even lent me a box cutter. It was 4:23 a.m. Not ideal, but we made good progress despite being short-staffed. As we left, I saw it again, the creature that had screamed at me earlier, rummaging through the dumpster. It locked eyes with me briefly, chewing on receipt paper like a horse grazing. It had too many teeth, but I saw it smile. The drive home was quiet, but Sarah kept glancing my way, clearly worried I might disappear. When we arrived, I accidentally woke my mom. Cole, the cat, was still asleep. Sarah was allowed to stay, set up by the fireplace with blankets and a cozy couch, definitely more comfortable than my room. Sleeping was nearly impossible. Before I knew it, it was 8 a.m., and Cole was scratching at my door for morning cuddles. I got maybe 2 hours of sleep. I think Mom and Sarah chatted while I rested. By 10:25 a.m., I had to get ready for work, just an hour and a half away. I grabbed as much coffee as I could and took a quick shower before putting on the same clothes from the night before. I wasn't about to iron after everything. The day went smoothly. It was Tuesday, so Kyle handled the promo ends, which meant front end got new magazines to advertise, and I didn't have to stay late. At closing, I took a quick walk around the store, but found nothing unusual. Just sleepy pigeons in vents and a homeless man busking. I gave him $5. Now I'm here, writing this all down, wasting unpaid time. It's almost 9 p.m., and I should head out soon. My co-workers keep giving me odd looks for staying late to type this on a work computer. Sarah's picking me up. It feels safer that way. I've had to tell her a few times I'd be late, and she should wait for my call. Kyle seems annoyed. He left at 4 p.m. after setting up the promo ends. He's now the grocery ADM. I should ask him for advice. But can I trust him with what I've seen? A slug man, a rubbery, psychotic junkie. I'm ending this now. Please, if you believe me, share any advice on how to handle this. I feel completely lost. I'm open to questions too. Maybe they'll help uncover answers. Thanks for reading. Nate, signing off. P.S. If anything happens Wednesday night, I'll post about it as soon as I can. I wasn't always afraid of the dark. One of the most memorable traditions from my childhood was the annual family camping trip to Yosemite. It was never just my parents and me. Usually the entire extended side of my dad's family joined. Depending on who was available, we'd have between 20 and 25 people. Months before the trip, we'd begin organizing campsites, arrival times, and who would bring what. In the days leading up to our departure, the group chat my aunt insisted on creating would flood my phone with notifications. I never muted it. In fact, the constant buzz only made me more excited. I have loved the outdoors for as long as I can remember. As a child, I often pitched a tent in the backyard and lost myself in daydreams of wild adventures in untamed forests from long ago. As soon as I could, I joined my local scouting troop and reached first-class rank before schoolwork forced me to stop. Ideally, I would have continued, but sometimes life has other plans. That's a lesson my mother often reminded me of. Still, my passion for wilderness adventure never faded. Each year, I knew I'd be packed into my family's car, driving down dirt roads into the heart of Yosemite National Forest. The smell of roasting marshmallows, the cool river air, the scent of sugar pines, and the vast night sky untouched by city lights. Yosemite was paradise to me. At least, that's how I want to remember it. As an adult, I now prefer the constant glow of Los Angeles. I no longer feel awe when looking at the mountains and hills on the horizon. Instead, I feel confined and watched. I sleep with the bathroom light on and keep powerful flashlights in my nightstand and car. The sunset, once a beautiful display of colors, now feels like a warning, as if I'm watching a timer counting down. In 2016, my family arrived in Yosemite for our annual trip. I was about 17 then, now considered one of the older cousins. That meant I was expected to help look after the younger kids, or at least set a good example. I've never been fond of kids, a feeling that hasn't changed much, but I was willing to keep my hyperactive little cousins safe. I didn't want to see them get hurt by tripping on roots or slipping near the river. It's not that I dislike kids. I just find it hard to connect with them. Still, I care about their well-being. Most people would feel a pang of sadness upon seeing a missing child poster or hearing an Amber Alert. It seems natural, a protective instinct wired into us to safeguard our young and loved ones. It's just part of being human. Another instinct deeply rooted in us is fear of the dark, or more specifically, fear of what might be lurking in the dark. Humans are arguably at the top of the food chain, because over time, we found ways to overcome this fear. From gathering around fires to the neon lights of cities, we've pushed darkness away. Places like Yosemite are among the last where one can still experience true darkness. You don't realize how dark night can be until you're far from urban light. I vividly remember turning off my flashlight, waving my hand in front of my face, and realizing I was effectively blind. My depth perception disappeared into the blackness. For a moment, I felt the ancient, primal fear our ancestors faced. The void with no way to know if I was alone. But all I had to do was turn my flashlight back on, and the fear vanished. Armed with light, I felt safe. I wouldn't have anything to fear. I'd say I wasn't any more afraid of the dark than most people my age. Did I love it? No, but it didn't stop me from enjoying these trips. In fact, one of my favorite games to play with my cousins at Yosemite was flashlight tag. You probably know the rules. One seeker, several hiders. Everyone has a flashlight, and if the seeker shines their light on you and calls your name, you're out. As I grew older, the game lost its charm for me, but my younger cousins still loved it. We weren't careless. We understood the importance of safety when playing in the forest at night. We never strayed far from camp, and everyone had a buddy. These rules were repeated by my mother to me, my older cousin Sarah, and the younger cousins just before the game began that year. I was tired and not in the mood for a game. I felt was childish for a mature 17-year-old. More than anything, I wanted to sleep. But tradition was tradition, and a Yosemite trip wasn't complete without this game. Among the group was my little cousin Sam, about 9 years old. To say he feared the dark was an understatement. He was quiet and less involved in the hyperactive antics of the other cousins. They never teased him. He was shy and preferred the comics and action figures he brought every year. That night, I could tell he was nervous. His posture showed his fear, and he kept glancing nervously at the dark gaps between the trees. When it came time to pair off, he immediately chose me as his partner. I'd always supported his interests. We had a lot in common. He loved showing me his latest sketches and talking about the comics he was into. Though I wasn't as shy at his age, I understood what it felt like to be an outsider. I wanted him to always feel accepted and confident in being himself. He compared himself to his more outgoing cousins. So I did my best to remind him he only needed to be who he was. That night, he was my responsibility, and I was glad to help him enjoy a game I once loved. My younger cousins, Daniel and Mike, were chosen as seekers for the first round. With a 20-second head start, Sam, I, and the other hiders ran into the trees. The game was on. Sam stayed close behind me as we moved quietly among the branches, keeping our flashlights dim. For a moment, the excitement and joy I felt as a child in Yosemite returned. The cold air on my face, the sound of dirt beneath my feet, the taste of s'mores still fresh. All these sensations brought me back. I became determined to win, both for my own satisfaction and to help Sam conquer his fear of the dark. If I could help him win, I felt I was doing my job as an older cousin. More importantly, I wanted him to realize he was stronger than his fears. We found a cluster of trees that made a perfect hiding spot. Turning off our lights, we crouched down among the trunks and branches, settling in as the real game began. I listened carefully to the soft sounds of pine needles and distant voices from other campsites, waiting for any sign of Daniel and Mike. Usually, a sudden shout or a flashlight beam would give away their location, signaling it was time to quietly move. But for some time, the woods remained silent. Suddenly, Sam tugged my jacket sleeve and whispered, asking how we'd know when. We were the last ones left. I told him that once a seeker called out, "Ollie, ollie, oxen free," it meant only one group of hiders remained. He asked why that phrase was used, and I admitted I didn't know the origin, just that someone had explained it once, but I forgot. Sam found it amusing. To lighten the mood, I told him a lie, that Daniel, despite his tough image, was scared of the dark, so we had a good chance of winning. It was a lie, but I hoped it would ease Sam's anxiety as he nervously picked at his hangnails and stared into the darkness. Did I think we'd win? Maybe. But Daniel and Mike were competitive and took their roles seriously. For several more minutes, flashes of light and surprise cries broke the silence. By my count, Sam and I were among the last players. I thought we might actually win. Even Sam seemed calmer, his confidence growing. I smiled, proud of both of us. Then I heard footsteps to our right, 2 sets, slow and deliberate, like Daniel and Mike trying to sneak up on us. I silently signaled Sam to stay low, quiet, keep his light off, and be ready to run. We crouched, listening closely to how near they were. Not close enough to be caught, but close enough that trying to run would mean losing the game. The plan was simple. Stay silent and still. Any noise or light would give us away. I could feel Sam's grip tighten on my sleeve. In the dark, he looked like a statue. His fear had returned. The footsteps moved through the trees. It was hard to tell if they were coming closer. The wind hummed softly through the pines. This was always the most exciting part of the game, the tense wait before deciding to stay, hidden, or dash away. But this time, something felt different. My excitement faded, replaced by a deep, primitive feeling. Every muscle in my body tightened. I felt small, exposed, and watched. My breath slowed and became strained. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Then it hit me. I'd been listening to those footsteps the entire time, without ever seeing a flashlight scanning the trees. Without warning, the sound of footsteps suddenly rushed toward us. Sam bolted into a full sprint, partially pulling me along with him. A cold fear surged through me, turning into pure terror, and my body reacted instinctively, chasing after him. But before I could blink, Sam vanished into the darkness. As I ran after him, sweeping my flashlight across the trees, I quickly realized I had lost sight of him. Panic set in. I stopped and turned my light behind me. Sam was gone. I was about to call out to Daniel and Mike that the game was over, and I needed their help to find Sam. Instead of their familiar faces, only the dense trees stood in silence. No one was there. I searched desperately for Daniel and Mike, calling out loudly and sweeping my light everywhere. But there was no sign of them. Only the night's darkness and the looming trees surrounded me. My mind raced to Sam's likely state. Lost, alone, terrified. I had to find him. Turning back to where I had been following Sam, I looked down and soon spotted his footprints. Though I wasn't an experienced tracker, I reasoned that if I followed the general direction of his prints and called out to him, he might find his way back. This was the opposite of how I wanted the game to end for Sam. With my flashlight pointed at the ground, I cautiously followed the trail. The path twisted through the trees until I reached the edge of a large clearing. This was where my family and I often went stargazing or spotted deer. I knew exactly where I was, but it hit me how far Sam must have run. The campfire lights were now faint flickers in the distance. My flashlight was the only light in the night. Sam's footprints stopped at the edge of the clearing where the grass met the tree line. He must have run into the meadow. Sure enough, I spotted a trail of trampled grass leading forward. At that moment, I thought, this is bad. Really bad. Sam had wandered far from the campsite, farther than anyone should. Anxiety gripped me. Bears were known to roam these woods, and the thought of Sam's startling one chilled me. Then I noticed something strange. Where Sam's footprints ended, another set of tracks seemed to meet them. Kneeling for a closer look, my mind spun. Instead of footprints, these were handprints. Yes, handprints. Their spacing suggested a four-legged creature. The scene was deeply unsettling. It felt like I was witnessing a secret, meant to stay hidden. I was disturbed. I looked back toward the campfires, their glow faint but reassuring. Every part of me wanted to run toward that light, toward warmth and safety. Standing at the edge of the meadow, the night's darkness pressed down on me with a freezing dread, rooting me in place. I was torn between my need to protect Sam and my instinct for self-preservation. I knew I was a source of comfort for him. My presence had given him the courage to face his fear of the dark and step beyond his comfort zone. But I also felt responsible. He had run off under my watch, and I'd lost sight of him. The blame weighed heavily on me. I had to bring him back, but I needed backup. I felt vulnerable and exposed. The thought of chasing Sam alone, especially with those strange handprints in the grass, overwhelmed me. I couldn't bring myself to enter the meadow. Swallowing my fear, I decided the best option was to return to camp and organize a group search. As I retraced my steps toward camp, a prickling sensation ran down my neck, like eyes watching me. I froze and scanned my surroundings. My flashlight revealed the trees and bushes, but shadows between them seemed to hunger for my light, threatening to swallow me in darkness. I fixed my gaze on the campfire glow. It wasn't far now. Focusing on the light, I took steady steps forward, trying to push away the image of those handprints and ignore the feeling of being watched. After about 10 steps, a branch snapped behind me. I spun around and aimed my flashlight. There, standing before me, was Sam. Relief flooded me. He was safe, though visibly shaken and covered in dirt and grass, likely from a fall in the meadow. I thought, crisis averted. Getting him back with only scrapes and bruises is far better than losing him. I sternly reminded him how dangerous it was to run off, though I softened my tone, knowing he'd been scared. I was just glad he was all right. Throughout the scolding, Sam kept his eyes downcast, partially illuminated by my flashlight. He looked guilty but said nothing, not even an apology. Taking a few steps forward, I reassured him I wasn't angry. He turned away, avoiding eye contact. I asked him to follow me back, but he stayed rooted, staring at the undergrowth. I checked if he was okay, but he remained silent. This felt strange. My worry returned. Was he more shaken than I'd realized? Perhaps he was carrying more than just dirt and bruises from being lost in the woods. I doubted he'd play flashlight tag again anytime soon. Determined to end this night on a better note, I gently motioned for him to follow. We could get him cleaned up and warm by the fire. I started walking back to camp. Soon, I heard him behind me and felt relieved that this ordeal was almost over. I wanted nothing more than to leave the dark woods behind and be near the fire. As we moved forward, I noticed his breathing sounded strained, almost as if he had a bad cold. I turned and shone my light on him. Instantly, he froze and looked away. In that brief moment, my flashlight caught his eyes, and my blood ran cold. Sam's eyes reflected the light like a cat's would. My family had a cat whose eyes glowed similarly in the dark. Seeing this in Sam's eyes shattered something inside me. I no longer felt like I was leading him to safety. The campsite was close, but I instinctively calculated how fast I could escape the perimeter if I ran. Keeping the flashlight trained on him, I saw more disturbing details. Long, deep cuts ran from his wrists, up under his sleeves on both arms. Small beads of blood oozed from the wounds, like fresh incisions. His left leg looked twisted, and the dark stains on his jeans were wet, definitely not dirt. Shaking, I whispered his name. I wish I hadn't gotten a reply. His jaw cracked open with a sickening noise, but only low, raspy moans escaped. Eventually, he managed to form one strained word. Sam. My legs gave out and I collapsed backward, dropping my flashlight onto the forest floor. As the light dimmed, I watched the figure's gaze shift forward, its neck cracking unnaturally with each movement. It began to advance slowly, lurching. A deep, primal fear seized me. I was frozen. Tears welled up as I watched the creature looming over me. wearing my cousin's face like a mask. It leaned close, and the stench hit me, thick, rotten, like roadkill baking in the sun. I felt bile rise. Then, the fallen flashlight's beam caught my eye. In the midst of terror, I had an idea. This thing had averted its eyes when I shined the light directly at it. It was nearly upon me now. It opened its mouth, revealing rows of jagged, rotten teeth. I had seconds to act. I pulled out my phone and turned on its flashlight. The inhuman horror was clear now. Dead, milky white eyes, cloudy and spoiled. The creature screamed, clawing at its face, carving deep crimson gashes. It writhed in agony. Using those precious moments, I grabbed my flashlight again. The thing crawled toward me on all fours, its face a pulpy, torn mess. I flashed my light directly into its eyes. Screaming, it threw itself back and then fled into the darkness faster than I could react. Once again, I was alone. Silence fell. My vision blurred, and all I heard was my heavy breathing. I remained rooted as voices and footsteps approached from behind. Soon, family members and others surrounded me. The following events blurred together. According to my parents, all I could say, tearfully, was one word. Sam. I don't recall the park ranger's questions, the search party, or the siren's wail. Everything was a swirl of lights and sounds. All I could think about were those milky eyes and how that terrible thing spoke my cousin's name. Later I learned from Sarah that search and rescue officers combed miles of woods but found no trace of Sam. Several family members refused to leave, insisting on continuing the search. Sam's parents were nearly inconsolable. It was all anyone could do to stop Sam's father from running off to search alone. Knowing what I know, I'm relieved he didn't. When I finally told my story, no one believed me. They said it was trauma. I can't understand how anyone could accept that. Losing and searching for a family member alone in the woods is terrifying, no doubt. But to think that explained my silence for days. That made no sense. The search continued for weeks after we left Yosemite. Sam's parents held on to hope, but their desperation grew painfully visible. They became cold and distant toward me. Though my parents reassured me it wasn't my fault, I knew some family members quietly blamed me. Eventually, the search was called off. No sign of Sam was ever found. My aunt and uncle refused to hold a funeral, though most of us accepted the harsh reality. Sam was gone and would not return. I'm grateful they can still picture his face. For me, all I see are those eyes, and the way they made me feel like prey. Even now, when I look into dark alleys or shadowy corners, I feel a fraction of the dread I felt that night in Yosemite. As a result, I developed a severe fear of the dark that persists. I cannot sleep with all lights off. I keep powerful flashlights on my nightstand and in my car. Candles are scattered around my apartment. I am thankful for the city's glow outside my windows at night. But on the distant horizon, the mountain silhouettes cut into the sky like teeth. A constant reminder of what lurks beyond the light. Therapy has helped me cope, but not fully recover. And after the news I recently received, I doubt I ever will. Last week, my dad called me at work, his voice tight and brief. Something had been found. A group of campers hiking off-trail reported finding something near a tree. Half buried in dirt and leaves was an object that stood out. DNA testing confirmed it beyond doubt. Half hidden in the earth was what remained of Sam's lower jaw. Last spring still resonates with me. I want to share the moment that convinced me, without any doubt, that the supernatural truly exists. Since that night, many things have happened, giving me more reasons to believe than I can count. At that time, I only had my own ideas about the world, based largely on speculation and stories. The concept of a tulpa, a thought form brought to life through belief, was something I accepted as fiction until it became almost undeniably real, except for the parts still undefined. From a young age, I repeatedly witnessed events I had imagined coming true. Children have a remarkable ability to recognize patterns, and I was no exception. This skill is part of human evolution. It was clear I had some degree of foresight, much like my mother and grandmother before me, since I was adopted. I am convinced this ability was learned, rather than inherited genetically. As I grew older and saw how frequently history seemed to repeat itself, and how similar events coincided with one another, I began to doubt this gift and considered it might be a mental health issue. But that weekend felt different. I'm not sure if it was the location near the ocean, the company of close friends during a pivotal moment in our lives, or simply the changing season we were experiencing. Most likely, it was all of these factors combined. Whatever the cause, that weekend was filled with a kind of magic that demanded attention. Every time something unusual occurred, the clear day would suddenly be swallowed by thick fog. The mist was dense enough to disorient anyone, and lingered just long enough for subtle changes to happen. Broken relationships healed, old wounds soothed, beliefs shifted. Late into the night, the three of us who remained awake began playing cards. Our discussion about which game to play dragged on while one friend shuffled the deck. My eyes fixated on the rhythmic motion, unable to focus on anything but the floral pattern on the card backs. 5 of diamonds, I said on a whim. That's the card at the bottom of the deck once you finish shuffling. He paused. All right, then flipped the deck. It wasn't there, I said, after you finish shuffling. Have you finished? Looking puzzled, he turned the deck over again and resumed shuffling. Minutes slowly passed as we finally chose rummy. When the shuffling stopped and the deck was flipped, a wave of anticipation burst as I revealed the red 5 of diamonds. You can do this too, I told them both. Right now, without hesitation, tell me what the next card is. The shuffler responded first, and as predicted, his card matched my expectation as mine was put aside. The other friend, a natural skeptic who always insisted on being right, despite evidence, was less convinced. Her guess was wrong. That's because you didn't want it to be true. You wouldn't want to be the only one to guess wrong, would you? That challenge sparked something in her. Fine. Next card is the Ace of Clubs, she declared confidently, leaving no doubt in the room. We all hoped it would be true, and cheered when the card appeared. She stumbled as she tried to explain. The fog lifted, and the three of us sat in silence longer than one might expect after influencing the physical world simply through belief. I was hired to restore a home video, and it's become a nightmare. I work freelance, digitizing and repairing old media. It's a decent living, mostly helping millennials recover memories from damaged VHS tapes, film reels, floppy disks, and SD cards. I've always enjoyed this work until Marcy contacted me. With everything that followed, I'm fairly certain Marcy isn't her real name. She told me she had a daughter turning 20 soon, video of her 6th birthday, restored as a gift. She offered double my usual fee to ensure it was done quickly. I accepted. She left the tape outside my door in a small brown paper bag. It struck me as strange. Why not hand it over directly? Was she in too much of a rush, or did she not want to meet? I didn't dwell on it. Inside, the VHS was more damaged than usual. It was a mini cassette, like one used in handheld camcorders. The tape inside was wrinkled, but likely salvageable. What concerned me were the black smudges and the melted corners, almost as if it had been exposed to fire. The label had only one word: birthday party. No date, no name. I wondered how Marcy was sure this was the right tape. I muttered, "Let's see if this even plays," and got out my VCR. The warped tape was tricky to insert. I hit rewind, and the machine made a grinding noise, like the wheels were misaligned. Seemed the tape might be too damaged to digitize completely. I was already imagining what I'd buy with the extra money. I pressed play. At first, static filled the screen. Then a kitchen came into view, decorated for a child's birthday. A pennant banner hung on the sliding door. A cake with 6 unlit candles sat on the table. Pink plates and cutlery were set neatly, and balloons floated tied to a chair. But no people, no children, no adults. Maybe it was a recording of the setup before guests arrived. The camera moved backward, shaky but steady. Then I noticed something on the floor. I squinted at the grainy screen. The camcorder panned across the room, slowly. My heart stopped. There were people lying face down on the floor, several adults and children, a woman with long, dark hair, a little girl with pigtails, a balding man, a boy wearing a birthday hat, all motionless, sprawled out on the beige kitchen tile. I covered my mouth, shaking. What the hell? The camera moved calmly, as if the person filming was composed, deliberately capturing this scene. There were at least 8 adults lying face down next to their children. It was unnerving. No blood, no signs of struggle or injury, no indication they'd been harmed or were dead. The bodies were arranged facing the kitchen table. It seemed deliberate. Someone had positioned them. My stomach twisted. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. But looking at the old refrigerator, the gingham curtains, and the corded phone in the footage, I realized this must have been from the 90s or early 2000s. This was an old event, and if those people were victims, they were long gone. A sudden click on the tape brought me back. The person behind the camera lit each of the 6 candles on the cake. The flames flickered. Then the image distorted, turning to static. I called 911. The police response was underwhelming. The officer asked about my day, what Marcy sounded like, then took the tape. I left shaken, unable to continue working. At home, I researched endlessly. Birthday party massacres in the 90s. Families found dead at birthday parties. And even did a reverse phone lookup for Marcy. Nothing. I'd recorded part of the footage on my phone to show my wife. She often accused me of exaggerating or worrying unnecessarily, so I wanted her to see it was serious. When she saw it, her face fell. "That's messed up," she said quietly. Later that night, I called the police station. The officer brushed it off as a possible prank video. "No proof anyone's actually dead," he said. That was the end of it. I triple-checked all the locks and held my daughter tighter that night. She was nearly 7, the same age as the girl in the video. I couldn't stop picturing her lying there, face down on the floor. I thought I'd have trouble sleeping, but exhaustion took over. Then I was woken by a loud noise downstairs. What was that? I turned to tell my wife, but her side of the bed was empty. I checked on our daughter, then cautiously went downstairs. "Darlene," I called softly. Warm light spilled from the kitchen. No answer. I crept down, phone in hand. The floorboards creaked beneath me. There she was, face down on the kitchen floor. Her arms were spread out. Her brown hair covered her face. "Darlene," I shouted, rushing to her. She didn't respond. Paramedics arrived quickly. At the hospital, doctors said she likely fell and hit her head. That was their conclusion. But I knew the truth. When I returned home later, a brown paper bag was on my doorstep. Inside was a mini VHS tape, edges burnt. The label read, "Anniversary Party." After relocating here, I started noticing things others couldn't see, and now they know that I do. I arrived in this town 2 weeks ago for a work assignment. My company sent me here for 6 months, officially to supervise the process. In reality, I was just meant to be a presence on site. The production plant was outside the city limits, about a 30-minute bus ride away. It was a vast, fenced complex surrounded by a green zone, acting as a buffer between it and the rest of the area. The town itself felt strange. Gray. No crowds, no young people. The locals were polite but seemed subdued, with a calmness that felt unnatural, like a wax museum frozen in time. I rented a room in a quiet private home. The landlady was neat, reserved, and rarely asked questions. What struck me was that almost none of the residents worked at the factory. Everyone there came from elsewhere. They had also been sent in, some for a month, others for the season. Locals focused on renting rooms, fixing things, or running small shops. It was as if they deliberately avoided the plant, even though it clearly supported most of the town. It felt odd, but I had no reason to question it. The salary surprised me. It was higher than expected. At first I thought I'd finish my 6 months, go home and forget the place. But something about the rhythm pulled me in, not the town itself. It seemed cold, flat, unreal, but the rhythm of the factory. We worked in shifts. The schedule was strict but simple. Shift, sleep, cafeteria, shift. There was a strange stillness to it. Time felt different. Everyone stayed busy, but the kind of busy where no one made eye contact, where silence was part of the routine. About a month before my contract ended, I met the new floor supervisor. He had just arrived, a decisive, no-nonsense type who respected how I worked. One night after a shift, we stayed behind in the break room. Someone brought a bottle and we talked. He said, "Stay longer. The team is solid. The pay's better. I'll cover your shifts. We'll backdate the paperwork. If no one asks, no one knows." I laughed, but didn't say no. The next day, I didn't go home. Technically, HR should have known my term was over. But the system showed an extra 2 weeks for wrap-up. In a place with hundreds of temps, no one checks unless there's an issue. So I stayed. Just a bit longer, I thought. Maybe a month or 2, until autumn. I didn't realize autumn would never truly end. One day I caught a smell. Not smoke, not garbage, raw meat. That first time, I was walking down the street and couldn't pinpoint the source. Then, I entered an apartment courtyard and saw a coffin being carried out. The smell was strongest there. It felt like I was the only one who noticed. Once the coffin left, the smell disappeared. Sometimes I caught it again, near an ambulance, a funeral van, the hospital gates. Then came the man on the bus. I didn't see him get on. I was sitting near the exit, half asleep, when I felt a cold, thin, bony hand grab my shoulder. He wore a heavy old ring. I tried to shout, "What are you doing? Let go." But no sound came. I was frozen. He stared at me, no emotion, no words. Other passengers didn't react, not even a blink. When the bus stopped, he stood, got off, and walked away. Only after he disappeared around the corner, among the motionless figures ahead, could I breathe and move again. I told myself it was a one-time thing, sleep deprivation, something rational. But then it worsened. The next day, after a night shift, I was on a minibus, barely awake. I saw a car pass by, and on its roof stood a woman, completely naked, pale, almost gray skin. Her hair was braided into a long plait, trailing over the trunk. She didn't move, sway, or hold on, just stood there, as if gravity didn't affect her. No one reacted except me. The car disappeared into traffic. I almost jumped out after it. The next day I saw her again, on the news. Same car, same model. Crash. Everyone dead. After that, I stopped taking minibuses. I began walking, even though the factory was far, an hour or more on foot. I couldn't stay surrounded by those blank faces anymore. They didn't blink, didn't shift, barely breathed. They looked like figures, like something had taken them, but their bodies hadn't caught up. I tried telling someone, an engineer I worked with from day one, a good guy, grounded, with dry humor and no drama. When I shared what I'd seen, he just stood silently, then said quietly, "Don't look," and walked away. A week later, he was gone, just gone. Someone else took his place. I asked our shift supervisor. His contract ended, he said, but the engineer told me he'd stay until October. It was only August. I checked with HR. They had no record of him, not in logs or systems. As if he never existed. That's when I understood. Those who see don't last long. Those who stay quiet last much longer. One evening I passed the factory gates. I wasn't working that day, just walking. A service bus was parked by the entrance, empty. But it wasn't. Someone sat inside, a silhouette. I stepped closer. It was him, the man from the bus, the one with the cold hand. He sat completely still, like a wax figure. Then he looked right at me. The bus doors were closed, but I heard a voice clearly. "You're here now." And the street lights flickered off. I woke in my room, unsure if it was a dream or something else. I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the one person I trusted, the supervisor who once asked me to stay. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked, "How long have you been here?" I thought, well, 3 months past my term, plus 6, about 9. He nodded. "Go to the infirmary." I already called ahead. The doctor was old, but sharp. Firm hands, keen eyes. He checked my lungs, pupils, and pulse thoroughly. Then he sighed. You should have been discharged. Your contract ended. Everything after that, you weren't supposed to be on the schedule. Before I could respond, he was on the phone. Send a car. Now. 10 minutes later, a black unmarked vehicle arrived. They said nothing, just put me inside and drove off. We traveled far out of town, then farther. It was a clinic, not exactly a psychiatric ward, but something in between, private, guarded, with barbed wire and steel doors. There, they explained, hallucinations, vapor exposure, toxic buildup, delayed effects, no lasting harm, no permanent condition, just rehabilitation. They kept me for 3 months. During that time, I saw nothing unusual, but I was strictly warned not to mention what I'd experienced. If I spread delusions among others, they'd transfer me to a special facility. I agreed. I just wanted to leave. When I was released, I returned home. I never contacted anyone from the factory again. No strange smells, no odd stares on public transit. The streets felt normal. Sleep came easily, but I still don't know what really happened. What did I see? Was it real, or part of what they remove from you if you stay too long? I still don't know if the problem lies with that town or with me. I took a shortcut through the woods. There's a house that shouldn't be there. I'm not someone who scares easily. I've worked night shifts, gone on solo hikes in remote areas, and even volunteered for a crisis hotline for a year. But what I experienced 2 nights ago, I still struggle to find the right words. I tried explaining it to friends, but every time I start, I feel like I'm losing control, so I'm writing it down here. Because if I don't, I might start thinking it never happened. That's how these things get you. It all began with a shortcut. I was driving home after visiting my mom. It's a small town, far away, about 2 hours through twisting mountain roads. It was late, foggy, and my phone was almost dead. Only 4% left. The GPS stopped working shortly after I lost signal, and I missed a turn. I decided to backtrack. That's when I saw an old wooden sign nailed to a pine tree. Miller's Path, logging trail, no through road. I'd heard of Miller's Path before. My uncle used to tell me stories about it as a kid. He said it was an old logging road from the 1940s, long abandoned. It leads nowhere fast, he warned. Don't try to find shortcuts through bones. I thought he was exaggerating. I turned onto the trail. The road was barely wide enough for my car. Rough dirt, tree branches scratching the windows, and thick fog forcing me to crawl forward at about 5 miles per hour. Every now and then, I thought I saw flickering lights through the trees. Nothing steady, just enough to remind me I wasn't alone. Then the engine sputtered. No warning, no check engine light. Just a sudden lurch and a strange sound, like someone breathing through wet cloth. Then silence. I tried the ignition. Nothing. Checked my phone. Dead. No signal, no bars, no battery. Then I heard it. Not an animal. Not the wind. Music. Faint. Like an old phonograph. Tinny and distant. A woman's voice, slow and wavering. Let the pine be your cradle. Let the moss be your bed. I thought maybe someone lived nearby. A cabin, perhaps. A ranger station. So I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out. The forest was eerily quiet. You don't realize realize how much noise trees usually make until it's gone. No rustling leaves, no insects, no wind, just the sound of my boots on the dirt, and that voice growing louder. I followed it. The path twisted deeper into the woods. The fog thickened, almost clinging to me. My skin itched, and my throat felt dry. The further I went, the more I sensed I was being watched. Then I saw the house, 2 stories tall, white paint peeling off in curling strips, a porch sagging in the middle. The windows were too dark, even though light flickered inside. There was candlelight flickering through the cracks in the shutters. The front door stood wide open. The song was louder now, echoing from within. The roots will rise, and the worms will feed. I called out. No answer. So I stepped inside. The air was wrong, heavy and damp like a cellar left unopened for decades. The wallpaper was rotted and curling at the edges. The floorboards bowed underfoot, but everything else looked lived in, not dusty or forgotten. There were shoes by the door, a coat hanging on a rack, a tea kettle, whistling softly on a wood-burning stove. I stepped into the living room. That's when I saw her, sitting in a rocking chair facing the window. Pale blue dress, long tangled hair. Her skin looked unnatural, too thin, almost translucent, like wax over a flame. The song came from her mouth, but her lips didn't move. Just the voice, slow and distant. Close your eyes and lay below, where time forgets and shadows grow. Ma'am, I said. She didn't turn. Then the chair stopped rocking. Just froze. The song stopped. I was about to leave when she finally spoke. Not aloud. The words pressed inside my head like a heavy weight behind my eyes. You weren't invited. Every hair on my body stood up. I stepped back. The floor groaned. Then the walls breathed. I swear they inhaled, bulging outward, wallpaper pulsing like skin. The lights flickered and shadows spilled from the corners like ink. I turned and ran, but the door was gone. Only wall, seamless. I spun, trying to find another exit. Every window was bricked over from inside. The house had changed, grown. Furniture vanished. The floorboards writhed beneath me like living things. Then I heard footsteps. Not hers. Heavy, dragging. From the stairs above. Each step groaned under the weight of whatever was coming down. I ducked into a hallway, heart pounding, found a door, slammed it shut, and switched on the flashlight. It didn't help. The room was lined with mirrors, floor to ceiling, dozens of them. But none showed me. They showed versions of the room, but no reflection of myself. Other people appeared, pale and trembling. One missing a hand, another bleeding from the eyes. One looked almost like me, older, tired, with lifeless eyes. Then they moved, not the mirrors, but the people inside. They all looked up at once and smiled. That's when I heard it again. Sleep now, child, beneath the pine. Behind me, I turned. The woman from the chair was there, but her mouth still didn't move. Her face wasn't right. The longer I looked, the stranger she became. Eyes where cheeks should be. Too many teeth. No nose. She reached for me with unnaturally long arms. I threw myself against the nearest mirror. It cracked, but didn't break. The version of me inside mouthed a word. "Wake up." I smashed the flashlight against the glass. The mirror shattered, and the wall behind it opened. I ran. The house didn't resist this time. Doors appeared where there had been none. Stairs led down instead of up. I don't know how long I ran. Time made no sense. Everything smelled like rust and spoiled milk. When I finally burst out into the forest, the fog was gone. So was the house. No trace, no foundation, just trees. I ran back to the road. My car was there, cold and dead, but real. I sat inside and waited for morning. When the sun rose, the engine started on the first try. I drove until I found signal and called my uncle. He listened silently. When I finished, he asked only one thing. What did the pine smell like? I didn't answer. I already knew he had been there too. I don't know what that house was or why it let me leave. But last night I found something in my apartment. A scrap of wallpaper. It smells like soil. And this morning, my hallway was 2 feet longer than it should be. I measured it twice. I think the house came with me, and I don't believe it's finished yet. I found a kid's bike outside the abandoned house. 2 doors down from me. Live just on the edge of a small town that my family and I have called home our entire lives. The town's welcome sign is only a short distance from my front porch. Despite this, we're not as isolated as you might expect. Neighbors live close, on both sides, and the town center is just a brief walk away. It's an ordinary place, with little room for anything unusual or strange to hide from public view. One summer, after finishing a semester of college, I went out for my second walk when I saw a bike lying quietly by the entrance of an old abandoned house nearby. My first thought was probably the usual. Someone outgrew it, or a kid had been playing nearby. Normally, I would have ignored such a common sight, but I remembered my neighbor mentioning that some teenagers had tried to steal things from that house recently. The size of the bike suggested the child was young, maybe between 9 and 12 years old. I figured it was better to scare off any kids hanging around, rather than cause a fuss over something minor. At the very least, it was something different to break the boredom I'd grown used to. I stepped past the overgrown hedges that had been neglected for years, and onto the front lawn. What used to be a driveway was now a patch of gravel, mixed with grass and moss. Nearby there was a small fountain next to the house. I had only gone over there once before, during winter, with my brother. The wild grass there grew taller than our knees, and neither of us wanted to risk ticks. I stood there quietly, listening and looking for any sign of life. But there was nothing. Since I'd come this far, I decided to follow the gravel driveway toward the garage. I always thought this was the easiest way inside. After Dr. Lowe, the previous owner, passed away, the estate sale was held, but the house remained. On the side of the building were 2 old sliding wooden garage doors. A broken panel, worn down over time, was pushed aside, leaving a gap that could be an entrance. I felt conflicted. By law, I knew I wasn't allowed to enter. The property now belonged to Dr. Lowe's wife. Much to the disappointment of the neighbors and me, the house looked like a whitewashed tomb, its Victorian walls hiding the decay inside. Even if I wanted to chase off trespassers, going in would still be trespassing. Plus, the house's rotten condition was dangerous. If I got hurt inside, say, by falling through a weak floorboard, there might not be much help coming. After a moment's thought, I decided to look inside through the windows and call out, hoping someone might come out. If I saw or heard nothing, I'd assume the bike was abandoned and my curiosity was wasted. The garage doors were at eye level, but covered in dust and grime. Still, I could vaguely see old furniture and other objects scattered inside. I called out a few times and knocked on the door, but there was no response. Trying to be thorough, I knelt down to peer through the gap in the broken panel, just to check if anything was hiding where I couldn't see from the window. I wish I hadn't. As soon as I lowered myself, I noticed dark red stains splattered on the concrete floor. A surge of panic hit me, and I jumped back, almost falling over. What I saw revealed a grim scene. The child was dead. His face was pale, with green eyes empty of life. Tear streaks ran down his cheeks and neck. The back of his neck was badly injured, with chunks of flesh missing and dried blood pooling beneath. His body was covered in dirt and wounds. I was speechless, only able to make quiet, uneven sounds as my throat grew raw. Whatever caused this hadn't been quick. There had been a struggle, but against what? The shock froze me, but soon the question came. Where was the creature responsible? I thought about local wildlife. A black bear seemed most likely. One big, enough to cause such damage. But where was it now? Had it left, or was it still nearby? My heart raced as I tried to steady myself. Before I could get up fully, a sudden loud bang erupted from the garage beside me. I jumped, startled, and looked toward the noise. I saw the large, dark eyes of a dog-like creature staring right at me. Its face was thin, with a long snout, and its front legs were slim, ending in large paws roughly at the size of my hand. Time seemed to stop as we locked eyes. Its blank, expressionless gaze held a sinister curiosity, as if studying how I would react. I felt like a rabbit facing a fox, hoping to escape by some miracle. Then, the old wood creaked under the creature's weight, like a gunshot breaking the tense silence. A rush of adrenaline surged through me, pushing me to bolt away from the wilderness of Dr. Lowe's property back toward safety. Behind me, I heard frantic scratching as the beast tried to break free and attack. Luckily, I knew this side of the property well. I darted through a gap in the hedges, bursting onto the driveway of the neighboring house, and hurried to the sidewalk. After checking for traffic on the highway that cuts through town, I crossed safely. Once across, I glanced back. The creature had not followed. Instead, it stood at the yard's edge, watching. Its hollow, expressionless eyes still held that cold, hungry look. I immediately called the police and kept an eye on it as I moved back toward my home. Remaining on the opposite side of the street, it watched me for a time, then slipped away behind the hedges again. I informed the officers about the child's brutal death and the dangerous animals still lurking there. They arrived within 10 minutes, sirens and flashing lights signaling their presence. They searched the area and recovered the boy's remains. When I asked if they had found or neutralized the creature, they said no. They had searched the house but could not locate it. However, they did find traces of fur and signs of a den in the basement and planned to set up cameras to monitor for its return. Down the road, I saw the child's family, deeply shocked and grieving, confronted with the lifeless state of their son. I thought about my own childhood. If I had been more adventurous, would I have met a similar fate? Probably not. But I never imagined a monster could be so close to everyday life. There's a reason I don't sleep with the door open anymore. Haven't shared this story in years, not even with my therapist. But I'm writing it down now because last night, at exactly 2:12 a.m., I heard the knock again. The same rhythm, the same pause, that same unsettling feeling rising in my throat. When I was a kid, I thought it was a demon. I realize how that sounds, but as a child, there are things you sense without needing proof. You don't question why your closet makes you feel sick or why the attic door seems like it's breathing. You just know something is wrong, and something was very wrong in that house. We moved in when I was 9. It was an old Victorian at the end of a dead-end street. Floors sloped unevenly. The wallpaper looked like dried blood. My mom called it a fresh start. She had just started dating a new boyfriend, Rick. He helped pay for the house but stayed in the city at first. So, for a while, it was just the two of us. The first night I couldn't fall asleep. I thought it was just normal new house jitters. Then I heard it. Knock. Just one. Soft. Like someone gently tapping their knuckle on my door. I sat up, listening closely. Knock. 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 3 more taps, spaced out. Intentional. Then, silence. I got out of bed and opened the door. The hallway was empty. The next morning, I asked my mom if she'd checked on me. She said no. She looked tired. Her hands trembled as she poured her coffee. I noticed a red mark on her neck. She said it was a bug bite. That night, I piled books against my door, just in case. The knocking returned, same time, around 2 a.m. But this time, it didn't stop. It turned into scratching, like nails dragging across the wood, then breathing, wet and slow, right up against the door. I heard something whispered, but I couldn't understand it. Too low, too distorted. And then I smelled it, rot, like something dead hidden beneath the floorboards. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the door, clutching my flashlight. The next morning, my mom had a bruise on her arm, dark and angry, like someone had grabbed her hard. She said she tripped on the stairs. She wouldn't meet my eyes when she said it. It kept happening. Some nights it tried the doorknob. Other nights, I heard it crawling down the hall. Once, I heard crying, soft, broken sobs, like someone trying not to be heard. Sometimes it came for me. Sometimes it didn't. But someone always got hurt. The worst time was when I forgot to block the door. Half asleep, I heard it slowly creak open. I froze, pulled the covers over my head. Something stepped into the room. It didn't move normally. Too heavy, too slow. The mattress dipped beside me, and it breathed right in my face. Hot, sour, and wrong. Then it left. In the morning, I had scratches across my back, through my shirt. I didn't tell my mom. She already seemed like she was falling apart. Eventually, Rick moved in. He just showed up one day with his bags and acted like he belonged. The strange part, the knocking stopped, but the house didn't feel safer. It felt colder, heavier, and my mom grew even more withdrawn. I started having dreams of something watching me from the hallway, tall and thin, faceless except for a mouthful of too many Sometimes I woke with bruises, sometimes with dirt under my nails. Once, I woke up outside, lying barefoot on the porch. My hands were bleeding. I told my mom we had to leave. She cried and promised she'd find a way. That night, she locked her bedroom door, and I waited. 09 a.m. Footsteps. They didn't stop outside my door this time. They kept moving, toward hers. I heard her murmur, confused, half asleep. "Rick." Then a crash, a scream, silence. I ran to her room. The door was slightly open. Inside, in the dark, something crouched over her. Tall, wrong, holding her down, hands wrapped tightly around her wrists. She fought, kicked, sobbed. Then it turned toward me and grinned. I didn't hesitate. I ran to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife I could find. When I came back, it was still on top of her. I screamed, lunged forward, and stabbed it in the back, again and again and again, until it fell to the floor. My mom was screaming at me. Looked down. It wasn't a monster. No claws, no fangs. Just a man. Just Rick. His face was crushed. One eye open, one shut. Lips split, as if someone tried to tear the truth from them. The police came. They said it was self-defense, that I saved her. But she never looked at me the same way again. We moved out of that house. She never spoke to me after that. Years later, I still don't sleep with the door open. I live alone now. 1-bedroom apartment, 3rd floor. No creaky floors, no attic, no shadows in the hallway. Still, last night I woke at 2:12 a.m. Knock, 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 tapping, and a voice behind the door. Not growling, not whispering, just tired. Why? This morning, I found something under my bed. My old flashlight. Cracked. The one I used to keep under my pillow. Still faintly glowing. And it smells like cigarette smoke.